Two. So what are they hoping to hear? House Judiciary Committee member Congressman Jim Jordan joins us right now, as you can see from Statuary Hall. Congressman, what's the number one topic you want to talk to the former FBI director about?
Well, I think, first of all, we hope he actually answers some questions today. You know, last time 245 times he said he didn't know, couldn't remember. So we hope he answers more questions. I think I'm going to ask him about the Comey memos. You know, he did 7 different memos back when he was meeting with the president, meeting with the chief of staff. So I'm going to ask him questions about those things he wrote in there. I mean, well, think about Jim Comey, though. I think this is important to understand. For him, it's all about Jim Comey. And he thinks the rules don't apply to him. You can just go to last week, where he said he got away with not following the rules when they interviewed Mike Flynn, got away with not actually allowing Mike Flynn to have, I think, his constitutional rights when the FBI interviewed him. And there's a host of other things that he did that just weren't consistent with how you're supposed to do things, right, all the way back to when he took the decision away from Attorney General Lynch and made it himself on the Clinton investigation. So all those things, plus I think some specifics in the Comey memos, is where I think I'll focus.
Well, you know, when he came out after 7 hours in front of you guys last week, he said, they're still asking me about Hillary Clinton's emails. I guess in his mind, that subject is closed, and he was right not to recommend going after her.
Well, I think it, you know, we're more focused on the Russia investigation. I certainly am, but you have to look at the contrast, how he handled one versus the other. Think about this fundamental thing. Remember, he called the Clinton investigation a matter. Right. And yet 7 different times in the Comey memos, when he's talking about President Trump and his interactions with the president, he references the fact that President Trump wasn't under investigation, and he wouldn't say that, though. Right. He allowed the country to think that he was. So in one situation, Clinton is under investigation. He calls it a matter. In another situation, President Trump isn't under investigation, but he allows the country to believe that he is. So this again, it's all about Jim Comey, and I think he mishandled both investigations all the way through.
You know, there's also a question up on Capitol Hill, whether or not the room you're in, the lights are going to go out at midnight on Friday. The president has made it very clear, give me $5 billion for this wall or the government's going to shut down. Where does Jim Jordan stand on this?
We got to get $5 billion for the wall. This was a central theme, central promise we made the voters in 2016. Everyone knows, just good common sense. We should be able to secure our southern border. We need to stand firm and get that done. And I do think, contrary to what Pelosi has said, I do think there are the votes in the House to get that done. I just hope our leadership puts that bill on the floor, the full $5 billion for the wall.
Do you think your House leadership is behind the wall? Because, you know, in the past, not so much.
I talked to Steve Scalise last week. I know that he is. I didn't get a chance to talk to Kevin or Paul, but I know that Steve is. I think they are. So let's again, this is real simple. Let's just do what we said. Everyone knows we promised a border security wall to secure our southern border. The president was clear, very clear about that last week in the Oval Office. Let's stand with the president and get this done.
One-word prediction, shut down, yes or no?
No.
All right, there you go. Jim Jordan, from the great state of Ohio. Sir, thank you very much for joining us live.
Joining me now, Congressman Darrell Issa, House Judiciary Committee member who was not in the room today but has been receiving updates from his colleagues on that committee who were in the room, and he joins me now. Congressman Issa, what did you think about what you've heard about today and about Comey's comments in the hallway to reporters?
Well, I think the hallway says it all. What former Director Comey just did was mock Miranda. He literally said, oh, we should have told him he had a right. That's laughable. You know, literally trying to roll back a Supreme Court decision that has been the law of the land for decades, that his entire career was an expectation when somebody was a target, would be bad enough. But let's talk about what he really did. He fails to tell the president, when he's the president-elect, that in fact they're already doing this investigation. He then interviews the National Security Advisor right after he becomes a National Security Advisor in the White House, traps him into a lie because they've already recorded his conversation with the Russian ambassador. So now what they're doing is 3 days later, he sits there with President Trump, President Donald Trump, his boss, and President Trump asks about Flynn, and what does Comey do? He doesn't tell him that he's got the goods on his national security advisor who has lied to the vice president. Now, if you forget about all the criminal stuff and everything else, he had an obligation to let the president know that he had a national security advisor that was now a risk. But if he had done the job properly when he had unmasked Flynn to begin with, he would have gone to the president with that, and this would never have happened. It was clear he was always part of the insurance policy. His goal was to entrap not just General Flynn, but the president, and he thinks he's done it.
I hear everything you're saying. You know, you just said that he sort of wanted to cast aside Miranda rights when he talked to Michael Flynn, but then you said cast aside all of the criminal stuff. And James Comey is saying we can't do that. He lied to FBI agents, and he lied about meeting with Kislyak, and he didn't tell the truth about talking about sanctions with Kislyak. And to Comey, that is what matters more than anything.
You see, but that's not what matters. At the moment that he unmasked General Flynn talking to a foreign agent, he owed the president an explanation, unless he was trying to entrap the president-elect, if you will. Remember, this is the Obama administration getting the goods, the insurance policy, if you will, on the president, creating a crime where there was no crime. Ultimately, the discussion with General Flynn wasn't a crime. They're not charging him with that. The lying to the vice president, although wrong, might not have been a crime. But Comey withholding this from the president when directly asked is, in fact, the kind of a thing that causes you to know that he was not only never loyal to the president, but he was, even before Donald Trump was president, he was already part of souring the presidency by not giving him things that he needed to know, for example, not to have Flynn be his national security advisor, for example.
I think both things can be true. Both things are true, that he should not have misled the vice president. He should have said, I did talk to Kislyak about the sanctions, and here's what we talked about. Here's why I felt like it was okay. Obviously, I can't do anything about the sanctions now, but we talked about what might happen in the future. It's part of the transition, all of that as you go through. But your point about the fact that why he would not do one of two things: tell the president, look, this is what we have on this transcript of this conversation. You need to know about this with your national security advisor. And why, when they had Flynn in the room, in the Situation Room, talking to him, why didn't they slide that transcript in front of him and say, look, General Flynn, we have your transcripts? Because he says during the conversation, you already know what I said, I would imagine, because as a former head of an intelligence agency, he knew they probably had those conversations.
Well, he certainly should have known, and quite frankly, he should have known to go in with White House counsel, because that was a responsibility he should have had. But Comey and the FBI carefully tricked him, or maybe used his ego against him, but tricked him into not doing it. Again, though, then FBI Director Comey had every reason to prevent General Flynn from being the national security advisor if he thought he had done wrong. Instead, what he did was he let him become the national security advisor, failed to answer the president's questions as he was trapping him into a criminal charge, and then squeezing him to try to get something against the President of the United States. The reality is, this investigation, long before there was a special investigator with Mueller, was really about Comey going after the president. And, you know, when you consider that the IG has held former director essentially accountable for wrongdoing, what we're seeing again is an out-of-the-control, corrupt, and I repeat that, corrupt FBI director who was on a mission and forgot that his #1 mission was to protect national security, which is not always about getting a charge on somebody. It is often about stopping a crime from happening. He made no effort to stop a crime from happening, and that is probably the best reason in the world that what President Trump did in firing Comey was the right thing and should have been done on day one.
Congressman Darrell Issa, thank you very much. Good to have you with us tonight.